So if you're anything like me and you're fascinated by UFOs and UFO research, or UAPs as they call them these days, then it's very hard to not come across Dr. Steven Greer. Now, Dr. Steven Greer is a medical doctor. He is a retired emergency room physician, and he dedicated his whole life to the research of UFOs and the UAP phenomenon. He's also the founder of the Disclosure Project, the Center of the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which they call CSETI, the Orion Project, Sirius Technology Advanced Research, a few other things. And he is probably considered one of the world's foremost authorities on all things UFO. At least that's how he sells himself. He's also produced countless documentaries. He's published many books. If you put Dr. Steven Greer into Amazon, you find all his published works, and it's quite a lot. And I personally came across him for the first time in 2001. With the Disclosure Project. It's more than 20 years ago now. And to be honest, at that time, to me, he was kind of a serious, semi-credible source, right? Because he put together all these quite believable and credible witnesses from the military, from other credible sources, talking about their experiences with UFOs. However, over the past 20 years, I feel personally that his credibility has suffered a little bit. And if you type in Steven Greer into Reddit these days, you find loads of posts like this. Why is Steven Greer demonized by the UFO community? Steven Greer is a Satanist and a Moloch worshipper, never to be trusted ever. Okay, in all fairness, this has 0 upvotes, but there are loads of posts that basically ask, is Steven Greer legit? Thoughts on Steven Greer? And people kind of doubt his credibility, also because some of his theories and the stuff that he's claiming is pretty far out there. So obviously, if you watch his documentaries, if you read his books, you will never hear critical voices against him. That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, nobody does that. Anyone who produces a documentary would not edit like his most adamant critics into that documentary. It's just naturally how it is. However, there are critical voices out there. And having done a little bit more research on Dr. Steven Greer, there is one thing that keeps coming back again and again when speaking of the credibility of Steven Greer. And that is actually a review on Amazon written by someone who allegedly took part in one of his CSETI presentations that you have to pay for, and then he does the CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind workshops, where he kind of claims to be able to contact and summon extraterrestrials and all that. So someone took part in one of his workshops and wrote his or her experience on this review on Amazon. But the interesting point about this review and why I think it is quite relevant, and again, obviously I didn't write it, I don't know the person who wrote it, so I don't know how legit it is. Take it with a grain of salt, but we're going to read through it in a minute, and in my mind it does sound fairly credible, but obviously to what extent it's credible, you have to make up your own mind, okay? I'm not saying this is the truth or this is definitely all correct. Ultimately, this is just a review on Amazon, but the interesting point about it is that the person who wrote it is actually an ex-Steven Greer supporter and believer. So it is someone who was fully convinced that Steven Greer is legit and that it's all for real, that he paid for this presentation, he paid for the workshop, going there believing that he's going to experience these incredible things, and then it didn't go quite how he or she expected it would go. So we're going to read through it, make up your own mind, but take it with a grain of salt, okay? Again, it's just a review on Amazon. Let's get into it. So this person is apparently based in California and calls themselves Knowledge Seeker. And the review is titled, At his CSETI workshop, I saw the real hidden truth. I followed Dr. Greer's activities with enthusiasm since 2001, when he established the Disclosure Project. I read his books, watched his interviews, and listened to his meditation CDs. I liked everything the man seemed to be about and shared his views about the need to inform the public about the presence of extraterrestrial visitors on Earth, the importance of establishing peaceful contact with those visitors in developing free or low-cost over-unity energy technologies that would clean the planet, eliminate conflict between nations, and bring about a dignified quality of life and abundance to people all over the world. I still share these goals. So you can clearly see whoever wrote this is quite familiar with the work of Steven Greer, I would say. Or it sounds like that at least. So it was with great excitement that I signed up for the CSETI presentation and a one-day workshop with Dr. Greer that took place on November 13th and 14th, 2009 in Costa Mesa, California, to experience and learn CSETI's contact protocol and to determine whether it would be worthwhile enrolling in a week-long CSETI outing with Dr. Greer. Surprisingly, my preconceived opinion about Dr. Greer's character began to disintegrate as I listened to his presentation. It was disheartening to discover he's excessively fascinated with himself, prone to indulge his name-dropping and in bragging about his fanatic high-end and or in the know contacts and connections, not to mention the multitude of outlandish remarks he makes with a straight face, such as his impact on the rogue majestic secret government. So much so that according to him, he rejected a $2 billion payout to shut up and abandon the ET disclosure issue. I read these stories as well, and this is also a reoccurring narrative. You see this a lot on Reddit as well in posts that every other month someone posts this. That Dr. Greer claims that some entity has offered him $2 billion payout so he doesn't talk about UFOs and aliens anymore. And it's like, to be honest with you, I don't think he's that powerful enough and has that many people on board. Not saying that he's a small communicator. Like I said in the beginning, he is considered one of the world's most foremost authorities on the topic. But it's not that he convinces millions and millions of people and really makes a massive difference in the world of people going out into the desert or trying to find UFOs and all that. It is still in the bigger picture a fairly small community of believers. So on one hand, I'm not sure he would just discard a $2 billion payout. And on the other hand, I doubt that any entity would put that much money out there for me. But again, this is just me speculating. This is just me reading into the situation. But this is a fair point that keeps coming up. Needless to say, that night I left the auditorium less enthusiastic about what Dr. Greer is all about. But it was not until the workshop and the outing the next day that my opinion about him really changed, unfortunately for the worst. Again, during the workshop, Dr. Greer devoted some time to self-admiration while attempting to appear humble by saying, "I'm just a country doctor from North Carolina." And he does say this in every single presentation that I watch from him as well. He always tried to marginalize himself. "Well, I'm just a country doctor, but I can contact these extraterrestrials." It's I don't know. It makes my alarm bells go off, but obviously, who knows? Who knows? By then, I was becoming quite uncomfortable about him, but as the workshop progressed, my discomfort turned into dismay as I watched how rudely he treated some attendees who asked valid questions or made harmless remarks, but whose timing or subject he deemed inappropriate. I was truly shocked and could not believe my ears and eyes as I watched him lash at them with such scornful contempt. It was so bad that I wondered if this man was consciously trying to chase these people away. Dr. Greer claims to have experienced meditative samadhi or oneness with all. If so, one would think he would have achieved a certain degree of enlightenment and a sense of kindship towards his fellow men. Then why would he be so harsh and unkind? Did he forget that these people paid a significant amount of money not only to listen but maybe to also ask questions as well? The worst and most disheartening part of this experience was witnessing the CSETI field contract protocol. At the site, a number of devices such as a radio transmitter, magnetometer, radio detectors, infrared scope, etc. were arranged. Even though I don't doubt Dr. Greer may have had some ET experiences in the past, what I observed in the field that night is inconsistent with his hyperbolic claims suggesting he can vector ETs and make them appear. His actions and the facts demonstrated that at the very least, it is a bold exaggeration. Not surprisingly, to cover up for his assertion, Dr. Greer made sure to bring out a series of possibilities for a no-show prior to the field excursion. According to him, sometimes the ETs might not appear because there's someone in the group without good intent and a clean heart, or the ETs feel threatened by US military, or even though they won't fully materialize, they will manifest in 1,000 other ways. Okay. I mean, again, this is just someone writing this in a review on Amazon. Okay, so I don't know, maybe that person is just disgruntled and angry and wants to diminish the credibility of Dr. Greer. But this, what he or she is saying here kind of goes in line with a lot of stuff that Dr. Greer says in his lectures as well. There seems to be an infinite resource of excuses and reasons why certain things are not the way they are. And I think also the point that this person is making about him claiming that he's reached some form of meditative enlightenment and then he treats attendees, paying attendees to these workshops like garbage. Again, I haven't been there. I don't know if all this is true. But if we can believe this source, then all this rings so many alarm bells, okay? And you would really need to be quite gullible to fall for a guy after you've seen stuff like that yourself. So I can very much understand why this person lost a lot of its belief in Dr. Steven Greer after attending this workshop. Conveniently, there was plenty of people to hand, mostly staff, who would come forward to state that while meditating they saw this or heard that. Most amusing though were Dr. Greer's remarks at the beeps and sounds made by his electronic equipment. You see, according to him, an ET named Walter communicates via one of those electronic devices, and Dr. Greer is able to recognize which beeps he makes. Additionally, the large quantity of wow and oh my god remarks coming out of Dr. Greer's mouth over unseen or imaginary non-events was sadly hilarious. Oftentimes, he would point his mega laser beam at some spot in the sky and claim he was seeing a partly materialized ET craft. Of course, anyone else saw nothing, even though, according to him, many significant events were taking place that night because we were such a great group. To make matters worse, Dr. Greer supplemented the lack of any occurrences with information he received via remote viewing. Okay, so very, very clearly, this is drifting off significantly, coming from the Disclosure Project, which is all about like credible sources, military observers and witnesses who say things that are just out of this world, but because they are who they are and they have this credibility that comes from their background, there's some believability to it. But reading this, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's just a review of one of his workshops, but it's clearly drifted heavily into the esoteric. It's all about believing that something is there. It's all about, oh, some people are not of clean heart and that's why the aliens are not showing up. It's all about like a spiritual connection that you make with the extraterrestrials and him like remote viewing what aliens try to. So do you see what I mean? Like it seems like at least it's come quite a long way from where we were with the Disclosure Project in 2001 to what we read here. I found this charade insulting to my intelligence, intuitiveness, and psychic sensibilities. I know ETs were not present that night, and I would have respected Dr. Greer if he had been forthright and acknowledged the fact that there was no activity. I would understand. It happens. Because I experienced firsthand Dr. Greer's tendency to fabricate, exaggerate, and embellish non-events at the CSETI field trip, it then follows that the accuracy and validity of everything he claims in his books is in question, since it's evident that, at the very least, he stretches the truth to the point where it becomes short of being an outright lie. In the past, whenever I would read negative reviews about Dr. Greer, especially ones describing him as a self-centered narcissist, I would reject them and conclude they were made by people who couldn't handle the truth. But based on what I saw and experienced firsthand, it appears that Dr. Greer is in love with himself, and because he sees himself above others, he dislikes most people. However, he desperately craves attention, so he created this ET disclosure platform to attract as large audiences as possible in order to obtain the recognition and adulation he sorely needs. In essence, regardless of the message, this messenger is so flawed, one must question the purity and true nature of his motivations. His book, conferences, and CSETI outings may be more about the money they bring than the message itself. Furthermore, unless you enjoy watching people being mistreated by Dr. Greer and don't mind embarking on a pathetic farce, I recommend you put your money elsewhere instead of spending it on any of his CSETI excursions. And then there's an update from a few months later in a letter sent to Dr. Greer. CIA Director James Woolsey, his wife Suzanne, and two others refute Dr. Greer's claims regarding his alleged briefing to them. Right. To read this letter in its entirety, please Google Greer Woolsey UFO Watchdog. So I'm not too familiar with this particular instance, but I do remember him saying in certain lectures where he was like, yeah, I've briefed those guys and I'm in close contact with the Majestic program. He often claims to be part of like certain insiders, top secret programs within the government. Again, I can't personally check the credibility of this person, but having kind of followed him since 2001, again, I feel there is a massive decline in credibility happening in the things he says, and that's just me personally interpreting what he says. Also, astronaut Ed Mitchell refutes claims made by Dr. Greer in Jeff Reens' website. To read Mitchell's statement, please Google Ed Mitchell unhappy with Greer. So reports like this, once again, reiterate on the conclusion that I've come to after looking into the UFO phenomenon for like almost 25 years at this point. 99% of people who are claiming to be experts and who give these lectures and who travel the world and put out videos and books, it's way more about the money in my personal experience than it is actually about bringing disclosure or ending the censorship around UFOs and finally surfacing the truth and all that. That's what a lot of these people claim, but kind of as it is confirmed in this review here that we just read, it seems like the priority is not exactly the disclosure, okay? It seems to be a big scheme that just generates a lot of money. And again, that doesn't mean that every single UFO report, every single thing that has been spotted in the sky is automatically false and is automatically part of some kind of grift where people just try to generate money. There are incredible cases out there, right? There are very, very credible witnesses and stories that really need some explaining. There is some of that out there. But in the bigger picture, it's a massive money-making industry. My feeling for a long time has been that whenever I watched anything from Dr. Greer, that he is mostly part of this whole world of UFO research for the money, because it returns solid cash, especially if you're kind of, as he claims to be himself, one of the world's foremost authorities on all things UFO and UAP. It is a profitable business. Again, I can't say whether everything he says is true, whether he is legit. I just wanted to share the story with you guys. I don't know the person who wrote it, but to me personally, having seen him in all these lectures and having seen his development from the Disclosure Project in 2001 to where he is today, it kind of falls in line with the suspicions I had. But that's just me. That's just my personal opinion. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you believe this report? Are you more on the side of believing Dr. Greer? There's no wrong opinion. Leave any of your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm very curious to hear that. Also, if you want to discuss this topic, many other topics, politics, video games, we have a Discord for the channel. The link to that is down in the description as well. It is absolutely free. I'm hanging out there, so you can join the community, be part of it. It's a great community. Loads of people there to openly discuss all kinds of topics. So feel free to join the Discord. Link in the description. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more and smash the like button on your way out. I would appreciate that. And I hope to see you in another video. Take care of yourselves. I'm out. Bye.